Hi, I'm Shane in Sweden, and in this series of videos we've been looking at how you go about building an Appsec or application security program. In Module 102 we answer the question who? Who are application security people? What's involved in the role? What sort of skills are useful? Where does Appsec fit into an organization? One important question is if you're building an Appsec program, what you should look for when you're recruiting an application security specialist. And of course, a mirror aspect to this question is how do you get into application security as a career? We will look at one aspect of that question, how to get into Appsec as a career today. In this particular video, we're going to look at a master's degree in cybersecurity as an entry tool to a career in application security. Although, to be honest, pretty much everything in this video would be applicable to all sorts of careers in cybersecurity, from forensic specialists to penetration testers to malware analysts. But of course, this course is about Appsec, so generally that will be our focus in this video series. So what are we going to discuss? Well, you will notice in large letters there the words in blue, which says a personal experience. I think this is an important point to make, since I actually have gone the path of taking a master's in cybersecurity. So that might color my opinion. And also, of course, I've only taken one master's in cybersecurity. So I can only speak from the particular experience that I had on my own particular master's course. So please bear in mind that this is very much my own personal take. So what is a master's in cybersecurity? Well, master's programs in cybersecurity are very popular right now, with many alternatives to choose from around the world. But what does it actually do? This is one of the questions we're going to look at today. We're going to look at things like how long does it take to get your master's? What are the sort of things you will be learning on the course? Do all masters in cybersecurity have the same syllabus? If you have decided, or if you're thinking seriously about taking a master's degree in cybersecurity, how do you choose a particular course? And of course, if you're watching this and you're considering a master's, you probably want to know if it would actually be useful to help you find a job and start your career in application security. And also an aspect of that is then when you're actually working in cybersecurity, when you're working with application security, will you actually be able to use what you learned in your job? Or is it just a certificate you need? If for some reason you can't or won't do a master's, what are the alternatives to getting into a career in application security? And we'll quickly examine those. And finally, is it worth it? Did I think my master's course was worth it? And as I said, it's important to note that this is my personal experience. Okay, so bear that in mind. So what is a master's degree? Well, here I can actually speak from experience, since I have 3 different master's degrees. I have a master's degree in space physics, I have a master's degree in software engineering, and of course I have a master's degree in cybersecurity. And in my experience, masters generally come in 2 flavors. Most master's degrees will be a mixture of your own research and taught courses. And the balance between these 2 activities will depend on the flavor of the master's course. One type of master's degree is a research-based degree, which can be a stepping stone or a stage on your way to getting your doctorate, although it doesn't have to be, it could be standalone. And here the main focus is on research. And these type of masters tend to be 2 or more years long. Another type of masters, which is often 1 year, although it can be longer, is essentially a conversion course. You take someone with good ground skills and you train them in a particular focus area so they can work with a particular job. Some common examples of this are my master's in software engineering, where the idea was that you would take somebody who had a bachelor's degree in something and you teach them about software development so they can work as a developer. Another common example is where you take someone with a bachelor's degree in some subject, such as maths or chemistry or geography, and you train them with teaching skills so that they can then carry out the job as a school teacher, teaching their subject, maths, chemistry or geography, to school students. Many masters in cybersecurity are an effort to retrain or focus train people with other professional skills so that they will be able to work in the future as security professionals in some job path, like, for example, application security. Now, when it comes to master's courses in cybersecurity, there are many courses from around the world to choose from. Here's a list of just some of the universities in the United States that provide masters in cybersecurity. Here's a list of some of the ones in the UK, and here's a list of some of the universities in Germany. So as you can see, there are many courses from around the world to look at. And we can pick out a couple of these and just look at them in a bit more detail. The University of San Diego offers a master's in cybersecurity engineering. It takes around 20 months to complete and costs around $40,000. Now they have a minimum requirement for entry to this course, which is a bachelor's degree. And you need to also have a GPA of 3.0 or higher. If you look at the UK, we can find a similar course from UCL, University College London, which offers a Master's in Information Security. This lasts for 1 year and costs nearly $43,000. And this has a similar entry requirement. You've got to have a higher second, a 2-1 Bachelor of Science degree from one of the subjects that are related. So that would be computer science, electronic engineering, or mathematics. So what will you learn on these courses? Well, there will be some differences between the courses, but much of the content will be similar. And we can look at some of the typical modules that you will be studying if you take a master's in cybersecurity. Almost every course will have an introduction to security, where you look at the theoretical basis for security. And by that we mean things like the security triad, CIA, which looks at confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Or you might look at classification of threats by different models, for example, from Meter, or you've got the Microsoft-based classification of threats called Stride. Or you can even look at different models of how a hacking attack happens, such as the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. And of course, the theory will then go on to look at how you can place security controls in place and policies to mitigate these threats. Cryptography is a fundamental aspect of the cybersecurity world, and often you will take quite detailed modules which discuss things like historical development, cryptography, cryptographic algorithms, why random numbers are very important in this field. It's likely to cover things like key exchange, the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, since this is the cornerstone of PKI, public key infrastructure. You'll probably look at techniques like hashing and MAC, and protocols, secure protocols that underpin a safe internet today. It's likely that you'll go into practical applications of cryptography, things like cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, and of course, digital signatures. Network security is also a very important aspect of IT security. On this type of course, you will usually go through things like the Open Systems Interconnection Model, the OSI, with the different communication layers. You look at things like basic protocols such as DNS, domain name system, but also more modern techniques, protocols like Wi-Fi, mesh networks, and Zigbee. You'll certainly look at the different hardware devices that help make the internet go round, like routers and firewalls and switches, but even hardware devices and software devices that you can use to detect attacks and intrusions inside your network, such as intrusion detection systems or intrusion prevention systems. For example, one of the projects I worked on in my own master's course was writing my own IDS, and you can actually see play-by-play series of videos on this channel where I built that. This was actually the start of this channel. Another aspect that will certainly come up under network security is current threats, such as denial of service or ransomware, and how, for example, botnets can be used as part of these attacks. You'll probably look at defensive aspects, such as the differences between a perimeter defense and a zone defense, or something much more modern like zero trust. And of course, you'll look at how we can place controls like access control or authentication to protect assets inside our networks. It's very likely that on a cybersecurity master's course, you will do a module on penetration testing or security testing. It's a really important skill in cybersecurity, and penetration testing and security testing is not only a lucrative career for any security specialist, but it's also really good fun as well. I mean, this is literally a module in hacking. What is not to like? But do remember, this is going to be a university course, so it will not only be hands-on practical techniques and using tools for practical penetration testing, but of course there will be some aspects that are more abstract and theoretical, such as, for example, the legal aspects of penetration tests. You will likely get a module on risk and compliance, which is a non-technical course that handles things like how do we define or estimate risk? How do we minimize risks within our organization using governance frameworks like COBIT? You're probably going to look at the legal aspects of compliance and the importance of privacy and how they're related to data breaches and the costs that might be involved there, things like GDPR, and of course, ISO standards that are relevant to security. When I had been accepted to my master's course, I actually saw that we had a module on compliance and thought that this would be really tedious and boring. And it was definitely the module that I can say I was least looking forward to. But actually, I was wrong, and we'll talk a bit more about that later on. So far, we've seen these sort of modules, but we haven't seen anything specific to software development or secure software development. You might ask, do cybersecurity masters have modules relevant to that subject? Well, the answer is that some of them do and some of them don't. San Diego University, for example, has a module on the secure system lifecycle, so it goes into depth about that. That's true. UCL, however, does not cover the whole application software development lifecycle, but it does have modules that cover aspects of that. So, for example, here we have a whole module on program analysis and testing, things like taint analysis and fuzz testing, which would be very useful. You really need to look carefully because there's quite a bit of variation when it comes to application security between different masters. Well, if there is such a variation between courses, how do we choose a course? Well, you've got the usual factors whenever you're choosing any sort of course, and that might be where the university is. Of course, costs might be a factor, but do remember the apparent costs may not be the real cost you pay. For example, fees in the University College London, UCL, are reduced by 50% if you are a British citizen. Many universities have scholarships or bursaries for cybersecurity, since this area gets a lot of funding. So don't take the face value prices, check with the course directors, you may get an entirely different picture. Another factor that you might want to consider is the school and its reputation, but I would make a cautionary note here. We already previously looked at this picture and you can see that of the universities in the UK offering cybersecurity courses, UCL is ranked first in the list, but it actually says ranked number 4. Now, what does that mean? This is the World University Rankings 2021 from the Times Higher Education Supplement, which is a newspaper. And here you can see they have a list of all the universities in the world ranked in order of university quality. So you can see that the University of Oxford is number 1, followed by Stanford. Now, if we change our region to just look at the UK, in any subject, you will see you have these different rankings, like you have the University of Oxford, Cambridge, ICL, and there you see UCL is in 4th place. So they are 4th place within inside the UK and 16th place in the world. But this does not mean that they are 4th placed for the subject of cybersecurity. This is for any subject. The rankings are for the whole university over all its subjects. Now, the information here is still useful. If you're trying to choose a course, you can look at the quality of the university in terms of its teaching and its research, citations, that's how important are the journal articles that they produce, how much money the university gets from industry income and so on, how international they are. And if you go in detail, you can often find things about your course, like, for example, what is the balance between men and women studying the course, how many university teaching staff there is per student, all very important factors. So when we look at this picture again and we see the rank number 4, that means that UCL is the 4th best university, according to the Times Higher Education Supplement, over all subjects. Now, this is, of course, still a worthwhile factor, since a good school will tend to have good resources because they're well funded. Also, you should be aware that good schools with really big reputations, like Cambridge or MIT, just the fact that you've studied at Cambridge or MIT will probably impress some people, and that may help you get a job. But be aware that this is a rating for the university as a whole and not a rating of how good their cybersecurity course is. Another important factor is the mode of learning. You may be working when you're studying, and so you need to do it part-time. Not all courses provide part-time study, or you may be like me and want to do distance learning. So I studied my master's part-time from my home in Sweden during the evenings, even though my university was in a completely different country. If you're going to study through distance learning, You really need to look at the student reviews to make sure that the actual university or the course, the cybersecurity course, has the setup to allow you to do your lab work remotely. Now, I never actually set foot on the university campus for my cybersecurity masters for the whole of my course. But with the lab and examination setups they had, I was able to do everything from my home office in Sweden. And I suspect, though, as a result of COVID, all universities are probably much better these days at remote learning than they were before. So this is probably becoming less and less of an issue as time goes on. Another factor you may want to consider is to look at the specializations of the course. If you are interested in application security, for example, then I would suggest you watch the video here on my channel for module 103 of this course, where you look at the different application security activities that you'll be engaged in, and then compare that with the detailed syllabus, the detailed course description of the master's program you're interested in. Similarly, if your interest is in another career, not application security, another aspect of cybersecurity, then particular courses may be better or less suited to you. For example, the UCL Masters in Cybersecurity has a large focus on information security, and it has a lot of particular modules just around InfoSec. So if InfoSec is your thing, then this might be a good course for you. Or if you're interested in police work, then some universities provide courses in digital forensics, which would give you that particular type of training for that particular job. There are many specializations like blockchain technology, malware analysis, biometrics. Find something that suits your taste. Also, if you think that you might be interested in research in a particular area like cryptocurrency, it might be useful to see if the staff teach on the course that you'll be taking part in have published research in that area. They may have specialized expertise in that area, and they may be able to offer a paid PhD program after you graduate from your master's, if that's something that would interest you. Another point is that some courses do offer industrial certifications as part of your courses, commonly in things like networking, and this may help your chances of finding a job afterwards. Finally, you probably would want to look at who your teachers are and what their students say about them. The type of teachers you get can enormously affect how much you enjoy your course. So with all these discussions about San Diego and University College London, you possibly are wondering which masters I chose to do. Well, actually I chose to do neither of them. I studied at Edinburgh Napier University in their cybersecurity masters in advanced security and digital forensics. And it's an absolutely wonderful course that I can thoroughly recommend. So why did I choose Edinburgh Napier of all courses? Well, how I actually made my choice was that I had been thinking about computer security a lot actually, and realized it was something that I was interested in getting into. And I could see it was going to become a very important area in the future. This was back in 2013, 2012. And in 2014, I saw this article online and I thought, wow, how cool is that? And masters in James Bond. And it's also a course that's certified by GCHQ. So they mentioned that there were 6 universities, and I decided, well, I'll look at these 6 universities and see which courses they offer. Now, here is the list of 6 courses at that time. 2 of the courses were only provisionally certified, so I dropped them. And of the other 4, only Napier University offered both part-time and distance learning. So did my master's help me find a job? Well, before I answer that question, I think it's useful for us if we look at some advertisements where people are trying to recruit application security specialists. So here, for example, is an advert from Spotify, and you'll notice that they don't have any requirements here for specific degrees or masters. They just want people with lots of good working experience. If we look at Facebook, here we've got an advertisement here for a job at Facebook as a security engineer. And in this case, they are looking for a Bachelor of Science or a Master's in Computer Science or a related field. Note that, of course, again, they're willing to accept equivalent experience. If you look at this job from Redfin, again, they're looking for a Bachelor's or Master's in Computer Science or related field. And here we have the Travelers Company. They're looking for a security engineer, application security engineer. And again, here it's just a Bachelor's is the minimum requirement. So in conclusion, some employers will want a master's or bachelor's, and some will want just a bachelor's, and some don't care about that at all. But notice None of them required a master's or bachelor's in cybersecurity specifically. Instead, they are generally looking for just computer science graduates, possibly because cybersecurity is still such a new field that there maybe are a lot more computer science graduates than there are cybersecurity graduates, but it's still not a specific requirement at the moment. What happens if you already have a bachelor's or a master's in computer science or some IT field? You've already filled that requirement. Is it still a good idea to take a master's in cybersecurity then? Well, the answer is yes and no. Cybersecurity is a very broad field with very many different career paths, and some of these jobs are wildly different from each other. For example, if you have a bachelor's degree in software engineering and you know that you want to do a specific cybersecurity job, for example, you definitely want to be a penetration tester, then I would say that probably a master's is not the optimal choice, since there are specific, well-respected industrial certifications for penetration testing. Since you already have the higher education requirements covered for most jobs, you might want to choose that as a path instead. And we're certainly going to look at this sort of thing a bit later on in the video. But if you are new to security and you're not really sure which career would suit you, then a master's in cybersecurity will give you a broad introduction to many areas in this line of work. And it will actually give you a chance to see what you find fascinating. And this is very important since you might well be very surprised about what you find interesting when you actually start to work in depth in this area. So in that case, if you're new to the area and you're not entirely sure which type of cybersecurity career you want, I would definitely recommend a master's degree over some sort of industrial certification. In my case, I already had a master's in software engineering and I had many years experience as an IT consultant, database administrator, and software developer. And yet I still found the cybersecurity masters incredibly useful. Did it help me? Yes, it helped me define what kind of security job I wanted, and it helped me find a job. I was hired at my very first job interview for a cybersecurity job that I wanted, all on the basis of my masters, even though at that time I had no practical work experience within IT security. Did I use what I learned in my job? Well, let's look at the modules on my cybersecurity course. Applied Cryptography and Trust. Yes, this course is really good fun and it certainly helps me with a lot of my practical work in terms of certificates, signing, and much, much more. Understanding cryptography is definitely key if you're working in IT security. Computer penetration testing. Well, obviously, you don't really have to ask that, do you? It's used all the time. The techniques I learned here I use all the time in red teaming and security testing. Also, the legal and organizational aspects of penetration test are very important in my current job, where I act as a liaison between my company and external penetration testing teams that come in, defining the scope and the rules of engagement and so on. Host-based forensics. This was a course I thought would be incredibly exciting to do, and it turned out, in my particular case, it wasn't as fascinating as I thought it would be. And while I gained some very useful in-depth knowledge about operating systems and filing formats and so on, it's not something I use very often in my day-to-day work, I have to admit. If we're looking at incident response and malware analysis, I would say incident response is very important. I learned a lot about working with SOC. I learned a lot about Splunk, which I use all the time, and SIEM systems in general. And on the other half of the course, which was malware analysis, I found that bit of the course to be hugely fun, really interesting topic, fascinating actually, but I can't say I've ever done it practically at work. But I do know people who did that module and have gone on to work with malware analysis, which is a very good career if you're good at it. If we hop over the master's dissertation at the moment, network security, fundamental knowledge, I use this stuff all the time, absolutely important. 3 stars, you need to know it. I keep mentioning that you might be surprised. This was the big surprise for me, security, audit, and compliance. As I said, when I was looking at the course structure, I thought this was going to be incredibly boring, tedious, and I was really surprised because it turned out to be quite interesting and has probably been one of the most useful courses I have taken in cybersecurity. Now you're probably wondering, why is that? Well, compliance and risk courses basically give you a language primer for talking to management. Management, C-level executives will never understand technical risks. So if you say something like, well, now that we've built this, we have a potential cross-site scripting or a potential injection attack. For management, that's meaningless, blah, blah, blah. Compliance courses will give you the theory, concepts and the language, you need to translate your technical risks into a business risk, into a format that management can understand. So this type of course is key, give you a communication channel to senior management when you're reporting to them or asking for stuff. And going back to the master's dissertation, and this can be a very good chance for you to study something that's of interest to you. I can't really say it was useful in my career, but the project I chose I found very interesting and I had really, really good fun doing it. I was looking at cyberbullying, online games, and I ended up publishing a paper in the Computer Security Journal with several of the professors from my course. And it's turned out that that paper has generated quite a lot of interest. So it was really good fun and I had a great time doing it. In general, I can say that yes, my master's modules were very interesting and generally I use an awful lot of that content in my day-to-day work. Okay, so if you don't want to do a master's or you can't do a master's, perhaps you don't have the financial means or you can't take the time to devote 2 years or a year to it, are there alternatives to develop cybersecurity skills and get a job? And the answer is yes, there are. And here are my suggestions in what I would consider to be descending order. But please remember, this is just my opinion. Industry certifications can be a good way to get a job or career, depending especially on what type of career you're looking for. And SANS is a really good institute with impressive and well-respected certifications in different aspects of cybersecurity. If you want to be a professional pen tester, then they have great courses and great certifications that are well-respected. You should be aware, though, that their courses can be quite expensive, and you may need to take several SANS courses to get the right level of competency that you need to, for example, be a professional penetration tester. I would say that some employers actually much prefer this type of certification to any sort of university degree. And here you can see the course path that you might want to do to become a particular type of penetration tester, for example, a mobile penetration tester. For those that are interested specifically in application security, there is also a specialist certification, Certified Secure Software Lifecycle Professional, CSSLP. And there are courses you can take which will help you prepare for this, although you can of course study it at home. It's one of those certifications where you can literally work from a book. However, you should note that this course, this certification from ISC Squared, you do have to have been an IT professional for a number of years before you're even allowed to take the certification. It is similar to perhaps the more known CISSP certification that many CISOs have, but this one is focused on application security. There are also other university alternatives that you can take, where you can take cybersecurity courses, where you can build up credits and perhaps reach a qualification that way through both Coursera and EDX. And some of these provide courses from very, very good universities. And I think sometimes you have to pay if you want to get university credit for the course, but many of them you can actually take for free. If you are just trying to get some idea about cybersecurity to see if it is for you, then there are several online learning platforms focused on cybersecurity, like for example, Cybrary or Code Academy. And there are general learning platforms that also have an awful lot of cybersecurity content. So for example, Pluralsight, the well-known online learning platform, they have many, many courses. Here you can see they've got 32 courses related to cybersecurity. And finally, if you are the sort of person who likes to learn on the beach or on holiday or late nights just before you go to sleep, if you're a real bookworm, then of course books is obviously a possibility. And people interested in application security, I can thoroughly recommend Tanya Yanka's Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. It's a wonderful book and a worthwhile read. So I hope I have been able to give you some pointers on the value of a master's in cybersecurity based on my own personal experience. But remember though that that is just it. It's just my personal experience. However you decide to get into application security, be it through a university course, be it through certification or self-study, I can certainly recommend cybersecurity and application security in particular as an interesting and rewarding career where you can make a real contribution to society. Okay, I think that's enough for this particular video. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you later on in other parts of this course.